This episode contains material that might be triggering for some. If you need to stop the podcast at any time to take care of yourself, please do so.
If you need support, you can call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 988. Dialectical behavior therapy was created in the 1980s by Marsha Linehan in Seattle, Washington.
Today, DBT is taught all over the world.
We're two therapists who believe everyone can benefit from DBT skills.
I'm Kate.
I'm Michelle.
And this is DBT and Me.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
It is now Q&A number 61, and we have a lot of disclaimers already. A lot before we dive into this Q&A. Okay, I'll start. So, disclaimer number 1, I am recording this Q&A in a different room of my house than I normally have. And I have no idea what the sound quality is exactly going to be like. It's a bigger room with less carpet. I can't imagine the sound quality is going to be better, but it's the space I have to record in. The second disclaimer is that as Kate and I are recording these Q&As for all of you to tide you over while I'm on maternity leave, this means we're fitting Q&A recordings in at times where, you know, like after bedtime for my son or while he's napping or that kind of a thing. And as we speak, my son is currently supposed to be going to bed, but I know I can hear him on the baby monitor upstairs where my husband is. So I know you guys might be able to potentially pick up on some of that background noise too, as he is trying to fall asleep, but he's not asleep yet. So those are my disclaimers. Kate, you want to say your disclaimer?
Yeah, as I cough. This is the cold that never ends. One of the other things about us trying to get this all in before you go on maternity leave means we're doing a lot of them close together. So while this is the cold that never ends, it's thankfully not lasting as long as these will take to release. But yeah, I'm sure that even with the best editing possible, there's going to be coughs and snorfs and other things because it just the last little bit won't let me go.
Yeah. No.
Anyway, so that's it.
Yeah. So we're here. We're glad we're able to record for you guys, but we also know that the technical quality of the Q&A might be a bit
little low.
Shaky as you contend with some background distractions. Yeah, totally. But you get to start, Kate, with the first one.
All right. So this one says, how can I support a friend with BPD through a breakup? Her boyfriend broke up with her a few weeks ago. In my opinion, he is not a great guy and did not treat her right. He even physically hurt her sometimes. The breakup really hurt her, and ever since she's been switching between idealizing him, being convinced that she'll never find a better guy, and saying that she's better off without him. They'll block each other and somehow get in contact again. But every time, he gets her hopes up and ends up hurting her again. I have BPD myself, so I totally get going through all of the extremes. But I've never been in a relationship before, and I don't know how to support her. A part of me just wants to tell her what to do, but I know that it is easier said than done. I have no clue how I can support her emotionally. Does anyone have some tips or skills to use?
So broadly speaking, I think this comes up a lot where there's somebody in our lives that we care about, and they're going through a challenging situation, and we're sitting there going, I have never been in a challenging situation like they are in, and so I feel in over my head on how to support them because this is territory I have never walked in, so to speak. But what I generally recommend, and what I'm going to recommend here, is trying to tap into if there's anything of what you can relate to about what she's feeling. So even though you've never been in a relationship before, you've never been in this specific kind of situation before, my guess, listener, is that you have experienced pain within a relationship of some kind, whether it be with a friend or a family member, and that you probably know what it is to lose something or someone important to you, because in general, that's a pretty universal experience. So her exact circumstances may be different, but my guess is that there's probably something that you can relate to. And so what I talk about with people sometimes is, yeah, you might not be able to relate to the specific circumstances, but can you relate to the emotion underneath the circumstances? And seeing if tapping into that helps you be a little more empathetic to what the person you care about is going through. Really, as far as skills go, initially I would want to be like, well, go to give. When your question is, I have no clue how I could support her emotionally, and that's what I want to do, is I want to support her. What skills? Give seems like an obvious choice. However, I sense a lot of inner conflict within you in this post, where it's like, I want to support my friend. I also, let's just be frank, I hate this guy. I hate this relationship. I don't support her being on and off with him. I ultimately want her to not be with him, but she wants to be with him. So it's hard to support something that you don't support, if that makes sense. Like, it's hard to be a supportive presence for somebody when you wrongly against the choices that they're making. That's a challenging position to be in. So what I was kind of thinking is like, you could try out some give, but be prepared to switch to fast. If she does start talking about things that happened in the relationship that were abusive, like you name, it sounds like there has definitely been some abuse here. If it gets to a point where it's really hard for you to sit with her and it's really hard for you to hear the things that she's saying, you can let her know that. Again, in a fast kind of way, and I will highlight the fair piece of fast here, right? Being fair to her, fair to you, but also really highlighting too, I think, the truthful, right? You can say things like, that worries me when he does that. Or you can say things like, I want to be here to support you, but it's hard for me to support you staying in this relationship with what's happened. And just see what she does with that. That's not telling her what to do at all, right? We do want to be mindful of that. It will backfire terribly if you just start saying to her over and over and over again, you shouldn't be with him, leave him, that kind of a thing. That's going to fall on deaf ears more than likely. But you can't tell her your experience of what she is sharing with you. So I would recommend leaning a little more on fast to do that. And I don't know, above all, even though it's really hard, she is an adult and it's going to be important to respect her autonomy. Recognizing that, you can't wave a magic wand to make her make good choices. And ultimately, it's going to be up to you to decide what you are open and willing to listen to from her and bear witness to. It's okay to have a limit where you go, okay, I'm all right hearing about these things, but when you start to talk about X, Y, or Z, those are things that I would prefer you to not share with me because it's really hard for me to hear. You can ask that of her and see what she does, and let her know and kind of get clear for yourself on the degree to which you feel like you can be there to support her, because you're not going to be able to validate everything she's talking about here. It would go against your values. So I would go more in the direction of fast than give on this one personally. But what are your thoughts, Kate?
Well, I like that because when you were talking about, it being difficult to support her being in the relationship when it seems so abusive, etc. I'm trying to remember which episode it was. I think it was on maybe actually on the episode of like recovering from invalidation. I don't know. It was something having to do with validation, one of our episodes. But I just know that somewhere on a DBT handout, I know that's vague, guys, I'm so sorry. But I remember the phrase, right, don't validate the invalid. Mm-hmm. Right? Like that's an important distinction to make. Like validate what is valid, but don't validate what isn't. Right? So it seems like something to keep in mind during that fast, right? Like how you were talking about. It's just like, no, you can't validate. Oh, he's a dreamboat of a fantastic, wonderful thing. right? Because that's not what you've borne witness to, right? Like that's not the truth as you've witnessed it. So no, I really like that idea. For myself, mostly I would recommend mindfulness/wise mind, not necessarily directly as a way to emotionally support your friend, but in order to keep yourself grounded in your own emotions so you don't necessarily get swept up in hers. And also because the more like grounded and in that sort of, I don't know, right, neutral, balanced, upright idea that they bring to for wise mind, the more you can be someone that she can rely on for the truth and for a more consistent perspective when she's going through her extremes, right? Whether she's, he's the best thing that ever happened to me or he's a sack of poo. If you can just maintain whatever your message is, whatever your perspective is, you can be sort of this rock in the storm a little bit for her. Something that is just consistent and grounded and reliable. And being mindful yourself and being in wise mind yourself is a good way to try and stay in that kind of grounded, not exactly neutral, but kind of neutral place. So that's the first thing I think about, trying to stay in your own emotions and not get swept up in hers. It sounds like you're already doing a fantastic job of this, but being kind and non-judgmental of her emotions, right? You talk about also having a BPD diagnosis and understanding those extremes. So it definitely sounds like you're already leaning into this, but just wanting to validate you for that, because that's definitely something that's important here. For yourself, I don't know, maybe you're not taking on too much, so I don't want you to feel too called out, but I did have the idea of maybe doing check the facts for yourself, just sort of around, how much you can do here or how much it is your responsibility to do here, just in case there's some idea of you taking on too much of a burden for how your friend is handling things or how she's feeling or how it's going for her. Not necessarily a thing I got a sense from the question, but a thing I can see being easily slipped into, right, when we're wanting to support someone who's going through a really hard time. You could suggest like self-soothing things to her. Not everybody thinks about taking care of themselves in that way. So even if you don't label it as that, if you're just looking at like gentle suggestions to make, not like do this, but like, hey, have you thought about lighting some scented candles? It's really surprisingly soothing or whatever. You can always suggest DBT. Haha. Go point her at a certain podcast. Say it might have some things to help. I think that's all I've got, Michelle.
All right. The next one was posted in the Facebook group. Give it the intro, but it says, "Good morning, ladies and gents. I'm new to the whole DBT thing. I was diagnosed in 2019 as BPD, bipolar disorder, and some ADHD after I was admitted to the ER and then the mental health floor. I tried a CBT group, and that was just not a good fit for me. I didn't identify with the people in the group as it also had an addiction spin on it, and my ADHD had me doodling and staring out the window a lot. So I just sort of floated around with the mantra, don't think, don't feel, which, as we know, isn't healthy. 2.5 months ago, my family doctor told me he wanted me off my Lyrica. The reasoning I got was, you've been on it for too long, and I took him at his word. Unbeknownst to me, he didn't read my file as to why I was on it. Needless to say, very dark and disturbing thoughts and feelings came roaring back. I spoke to a doctor, not mine, as he's on a much-needed vacation, via phone. He asked me if my doctor knew of my diagnosis. I told him I assumed he'd read my file. Needless to say, this doctor put me back on Lyrica. But it's such a small dose, nowhere near strong enough. I went and bought a DBT skills workbook, and it just seems so overwhelming. I need help in all areas of the book. I don't know where to start. I also found these lovely ladies' podcast and listen to at least 3 a day. Also, quick question. Is rest the same as stop? So there's a lot packed in here.
There is a lot.
We're going to be addressing.
That's fair. It's funny, Michelle, I'm realizing as we get here that I had highlighted a bit of the answer for for that, to say that I might steal it because I'm going first, and it makes sense for you to not ignore it. So anyway,
yeah, totally.
Sorry, stealing a thing.
That's okay. You can steal it.
Which is to say, to answer the last question first, rest and stop basically are very much the same thing. Are they identical? No. But rest, once again, is relax, evaluate, set an intention, and take action, which is very similar to stop, take a step back, observe, and proceed mindfully, right? You can see there's a lot in common there. So very much the same, only different, right? That idea. Also, I wanted to say I love to hear that this person is listening to us so much. And also remember, No one can absorb the skills that fast. Right? Especially in the early days when we were talking about like distinct skills almost every single episode. Like one skill, that's a whole lot of stuff to be trying to absorb very quickly at 3 a day. So, keep at it if you want to. Highly recommend re-listening to things as you need to or as you're going through that part of the book. But I would definitely say at the very least with the book, take your time. Take at least a week or so per skill to try and focus on it and focus on implementing it. Michelle and I think, harp on this a lot at various times over the course of the podcast is just take time, right? Take longer than a week if you need to. I was just starting a new DBT group tonight, actually, through my clinic. And one of the people was starting their second pass at all the modules, right? They've gone through all of the modules with me and they're starting again. And they were like, yeah, it feels sometimes like the first time is just to get the shape of things. And then I have to go back a second time around to actually understand stuff, right? Like I got the structure before and now I can fill in understanding. And that's not a rare opinion, right? A lot of people take DBT 2, 3, 4 times, right? Because it's a shitload to absorb. And even when you absorb it, taking it from having been absorbed to putting it into action is a lot to ask. So take your time with it. That would be my first thing when you talk about being overwhelmed with the book. I just think slow it down will help it be a lot less overwhelming. Michelle has really great suggestions also for skills to start with. So I will just add to the pile that a couple of my go-tos are self-soothing and tip as just good have in your back pocket for almost any situation kind of skills. Tip for the more extreme emotional states and self-soothing for the tenderer, more mellow emotional states. And then last but not least, Michelle is also going to go into this more, but I just wanted to second what she's going to say. But I am saying it first, technically. Aha! Which is just to say, good job advocating for yourself around your medications. That's a hard thing to do. Congratulations and good job. And I hope that continues to improve. So, yeah.
Definitely. For some reason, that was really where I started with responding to this listener. That just really stood out to me and all that they were sharing of like you did a great job of when you saw the side effects coming up for you of what was happening, not being on the Lyrica anymore, you took action promptly to make sure that you did not go down an even worse path than you could already sense you were starting to go down. So that's amazing. And it not that you were necessarily asking here for any advice around the stuff with meds. I mean, like you said, it sounds like you are figuring out your dosage and stuff like that since you're on a smaller dose now. But something that stood out to me about what you shared that I wanted to name for everybody listening is that, even though Kate and I, with the role that we are in as master's level mental health therapists who don't have anything to do with prescribing medications, the biggest thing that I suggest to my clients around meds and what I would suggest to anybody listening who is on medication for mental health is to take notes. Be documenting what happens to you every time you start or stop a new medication. Yep, document your side effects, positive or negative. Like, really keep track of that yourself because, unfortunately, as this listener found out, even if it is well documented in your file, that doesn't mean that that's always going to be looked at as closely as it should be. And if you have made sure that you're really keeping track of your history, then whenever you do make a medication change, you can be a little more in the driver's seat, going to that prescriber and saying, hey, I have some notes with me. This is a med I tried. This is what happened when I was on it. This is how long I was on it for. This is why I stopped and what that looked like. Document. So that you feel really empowered when it comes to decisions that are being made around your medications. So again, not exactly what this listener was asking, but it was just something that really seemed important to name based off of the story that they shared with what did happen to them. But as you mentioned, Kate, one of the big things they also talked about in their post was that they feel really overwhelmed by the book. They don't know where to start. Again, I think this is really common when people do decide to start learning DBT on their own. Kate and I are big advocates, I would say, of self-directed DBT. I mean, yes, if you can get into a DBT group, if you can get with a DBT therapist, do that by all means. And also, some DBT is better than no DBT. And there are tons of people out there who are in the same boat as this listener with this part of what they shared too, which is like, hey, I'm trying to navigate this. I'm trying to figure it out. I am realizing this is a lot to teach myself DBT. So we want to help you out. And Kate already gave the biggest suggestion that we talk about, which is to slow down. But as far as skills, yeah, I like your suggestions, Kate, of self-soothing and tip. I was thinking to add to that, it's so cliche, but start with mindfulness.
Yeah.
Like you may spend a lot of time on the mindfulness chapters of the book. That's okay. Start there. That's a really, really good place to begin. And I also like please as a good starting skill too. So between the two of us, we just gave you 4 things, which is already plenty.
Yes.
of where you can focus your energy and your attention. The other thing that also seemed important to mention, reading your post, hearing the experience about, I tried a CBT group, it wasn't a good fit, you are on medications for your mental health, which is, fantastic. And also, I'm guessing in this post that you're not in therapy right now, and that since you tried that CBT group, you maybe haven't gone back to a group therapy format. Of course, we don't know where you live. We don't know what access to resources you have or anything like that. But it would be really great if you are able to start digging into potentially either finding a DBT group or finding an individual therapist. Like I mentioned a moment ago, we are all about self-directed DBT, and we believe it can be really beneficial, and people can actually take themselves pretty far with teaching themselves DBT. And also, sometimes you get where you want to get to a whole lot faster when you have somebody there supporting you who is a mental health professional. And this listener sounds like they're exactly at that point where it's like, yes, you have been advocating for yourself and doing things on your own, and now you might be ready to just, again, have a little bit more support to keep going what you've already started. And what you've started is already pretty impressive. So might be time, listener, if you haven't already, to look into a group or individual therapist.
I like it. All right.
Okay.
On to the next one.
This
one says, hi, just looking for a bit of advice. I started DBT not too long ago and have been regularly practicing my distress tolerance skills. I try to do a self-soothing activity every day, etc., so I find it easier. Sometimes I am able to use my rest skill when I start to feel as though things are getting to me. However, when I feel as if I am in full-blown crisis mode, all my memory of my distress tolerance skills swiftly go out the window and I find it difficult to calm myself. Does anyone have any advice on how to remember to use them when you are having a crisis?
Yeah. Funny that they mention rest when the last one also mentioned rest.
I thought that too.
Yeah. As far as advice goes on how to remember to use skills when you're in a crisis, first of all, I think you're already doing the biggest thing we talk about, which is that you need to practice skills when you are not in crisis. So good for you, listener, because you are doing that, it sounds like, very, very well. But even though, there are a lot of distress tolerance skills that I love and think are very beneficial for many, many reasons, there is one above and beyond that is like the crisis survival skill, more so than accept, more so than improve and all of that, which is tip. When you are really, really flooded, you're at an 8, 9, or 10 on an emotional distress scale for yourself, you want to go to tip. And when you go to tip, pick one thing from tip out of the 4 options that you have. And as a brief reminder, those options are temperature, aka using cold water, intense exercise, progressive muscle relaxation, and paced breathing. So pick one of those. And make that the only thing that you are going to try to remember when you're in crisis. The less work for your brain, the better. So it might be a good idea, if you haven't already, try each of them out. Again, when you're not in crisis, to kind of see which one may fit best for you. But yes, you want to remember one piece of tip and to start there. Because even just one component can be very, very powerful in terms of bringing your emotional distress level down. You certainly, and I say this, like, don't do all four. It's too much. It's too much. Pick one, try it, see how it goes. If it doesn't do what you want it to do, then you can try some of the others. But as far as remembering goes, since that's the thing you're struggling with, is remembering to use your skills when you're in a crisis, make it real easy on yourself and pick one component from TIP that you want to remember. As far as some things that may help with that remembering of whatever thing you choose, I like the idea of putting up visual reminders. Visual reminders can look like putting up sticky notes in your house if you need to. You can also put something on your phone, right? As like your phone wallpaper or something like that. So, whatever that may look like for you, to remind you, do this thing when I'm struggling. Just make it someplace where you see it on a regular basis. That will also really help your brain remember. And the other thing that I think is going to be really important is to tell other people in your life who you're close to what the thing is that you pick to do, so they can remind you. If you're anything like me, what do I tend to do when I'm feeling emotionally overwhelmed? Well, I reach out to Kate. I reach out to someone, but it's Kate a lot of the time. And if you make sure that those people in your life know, hey, if I reach out to you, remind me to do this. Ask me, hey, have you already tried that intense exercise thing that you said you were going to do, or you said something about how you wanted to put your bowl of your face in a bowl of ice water. Have you tried that? Do you want to do that? Right? Like, ask them to remind you and say, hey, if I call you and I really sound distressed, please remind me to do this thing. And that can also really help if you notice that that's your tendency. Or again, if there are people that you live with, make sure they know, like, hey, these are kind of my warning signs. When you see me doing these things or saying these things, remind me to do this. Use support. That's pretty major sometimes.
Yeah, no, that is very true. It's funny, Michelle, this is one of the ones that's definitely suffered from the you got to the notes first.
Yeah. I'm sure you were thinking tip as well.
Well, I was thinking tip as well, but mostly just the ways that you were suggesting people, the listener, be able to better remember, right? Because you were right. They're doing the first thing I would recommend, which is just practicing consistently, right? Like outside of crisis situations. So that's fantastic. Putting reminders places, right? I'm a big fan of writing stuff on mirrors. That's a place I can put stuff. If you're worried about stuff looking weird to guests or whatever, you can have things that are meaningful to you. That don't have to be, obvious. When you're having a mental health crisis, put your face in the bucket of water. It could just be a cute cartoon sticker of a bucket. I don't know, right?
Right, yep.
Right, so, but putting visual reminders around places and telling, other people to help, that's really just most of what I would say also. So great minds think alike in this particular regard. You can also always just add interacting with the ideas in new ways, right? Lately, I've been on a real kick around having people repeat things just over and over and over again in their mind using like beads or other things. Think like a rosary, right? Like a string of beads to count repetitions. So you could be like, when I'm freaking out, I go to tip. When I'm freaking out, I go to tip. When I'm freaking out, I go to tip. When I'm freaking out, I go to tip, right? And you just think it ad nauseum, like a truly obnoxious number of times every day. That will help just brute force wire that thought into your head, which is more insidiously effective than you might think, which I've been reminded of recently for myself. So mostly just a lot of the same things that Michelle said. So thumbs up on that. I would add maybe along with tip is absolutely the first thing, but I was like, I have to say something other than what Michelle said. So I would add on ride the wave as an idea for a skill, right? If I can remember no other skill, sometimes it works for me to just remember my favorite mantra anyway, which is this too shall pass, right? So if I can't think of going anywhere or doing anything, I'll just, I don't know, it's been a while since I was in this bad of a spot, but I've been there enough historically to say there have been times where I just didn't trust myself to move, because if I moved out of the exact physical position and location I was in, then I was going to self-harm. And so I just needed to not move, but still get past that moment, right? So I would say that ride the wave can be useful, right? In those kinds of times when you just need to get past the, crest of the wave, right? Of the emotional experience that you're going through. That may even be a pre-tip thing sometimes, depending on what happens to you in your moments of extraordinary overwhelm. Maybe you, like me, need to sometimes just not move, right? So ride the wave, I think, is something that I would throw on there also. And Michelle is normally the one who's better about this, but I was scrolling through the list of our old episodes for other reasons today, and voila! I think we have one that actually might speak well to this, which is on the 29th of August in 2021, we put out one called Using DBT Skills to Manage Mental Health Before a Crisis.
I think you said September.
Did I say that?
September 29th?
I did say September.
It says 9/29 in the notes.
I mean September.
I think 9 is September.
I don't normally do this time of night, guys. I'm sorry. Yes, that one. September. Fuck me. Anyway, at least I think so. All right. Now I'm wondering if it said August and I put in 9. I don't know what truth is, guys. It's either August or September 29th in 2021. But the name of it, I'm really very sure the name is Using DBT Skills to Manage Mental Health Before a Crisis, which I think it speaks in part to some of what you're talking about. So that was all. Michelle is dutifully finding it for you now.
Yes, it is September 29th.
Okay. Go me.
They would have gotten to the ballpark anyways. August says September. Aren't
right, they're close enough. Right. Anyway, with that, I am done.
Okay. On to the last one. So the last one says, I've gone to therapy now pretty steady for 5 years. I lost my insurance, but more important, I lost my sister, my best friend, who was my golden retriever, and my grandpa I didn't have in a matter of 4 months. I suffer from PTSD, anxiety, and depression. I've used medical marijuana for 10 years now. I finally stopped smoking to try and get better, but I need help, and it kills me what I'm teaching my son. I listen to you every day. So what can I do to get better? I have my son full-time and my ex-in-law support, and that's about it. My family fell apart after my sister passed. Which episodes will help me? Thanks so much in advance.
Oh, my heart just hurts. Mm-hmm. That's just a lot of fucking loss in one place. So, first of all, I just want to validate the heck out of that. I also wanted to say, try to be maybe a little more self-compassionate. Maybe you are, but it doesn't shine through immediately in that message. The fact that it kills you what you're teaching your son, like that motivation, that self-awareness, that drive to improve your life for the betterment of your kiddo, like that's amazing, right? Plus, fun fact, right, about being self-compassionate, we're more likely to stick to our goals and move forward towards our achievements if we're being self-compassionate than if we're shaming ourselves. Right? So you're actually more likely to stay on track towards the improvements you're trying to make if you can be nice to yourself about it being a struggle. To more directly answer the question of which episodes will help, Michelle has a great list also. As it occurs to me, I could have also gone and looked at some episodes probably from the couch and the chair. We probably have some good ones over there, actually. Anyway, I didn't look, so I don't know the names, but go look over there. There's not as many to scroll through. But the ones that I wanted to highlight would be the original Radical Acceptance episode, which went out on 7/15/2020. We have one that's called Grief and DBT that was put out on December 9th, 2020. DBT Skills for Parenting Challenges, I thought might also be relevant, considering the listener was talking about being a parent. So that one went out on August 25th, 2021. So those were the specific episodes I wanted to highlight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I also really wanted to hone in on the specific question that they asked, which was, which episodes will help me? You came up with some great ones. So I came up with a few too. So listener, we've got lots for you. The first one I thought about was actually a more recent one we posted, which was our Creating a Life Worth Living episode. Because I just got the sense in reading what they shared that they're kind of at this point in their life after all of this loss and after, really trying to make changes in terms of, no longer using marijuana and trying to, again, like maybe shift with how things feel with their son. I was just like, yes, I can tell that you are trying to like rise up from everything that you've experienced and you are really working on creating a life worth living. That shit's hard.
Yeah.
Really hard. So we posted that episode on December 27th, 2023. So late last year. Maybe this is too on the nose, but they mentioned I suffer from PTSD, anxiety, and depression. So I was like, well, hey, look at that. We've got an episode for each one of those. As a reminder, in those episodes, if there are other people listening who have not listened to those particular episodes, what we did in each of those is we broke down what DBT skills we really think in particular are helpful for each of those struggles. So the PTSD one was posted July 28th, 2021. The episode about anxiety was posted April 27th, 2022. And the episode about depression was posted May 25th, 2022. So I'm hoping that there will be some stuff in there that will be helpful in terms of, again, just kind of guiding towards like really focus on these DBT skills. Because again, as we've acknowledged earlier in this episode, it is very easy to just like drown in all the DBT. And you need a direction to go in sometimes, right? A couple skills there, like I'm really going to start with these and see where it takes me. And the last thing I'm about to say has nothing to do with DBT, nothing to do with episodes. But when I read this, like you said, Kate, kind of what resonated with you was, sounds like this listener really needs some self-compassion. Mm-hmm. What stood out to me is just sensing, this listener really needs support and community. Like this listener is lonely. They need more people around them. They need more people who are either in the struggle with them or will at least understand the struggle. And I don't know exactly what that could look like here. Depending on, again, like where this listener is located and what resources they have access to and that kind of a thing. But yeah, I wish I had better guidance to maybe give. But that's where I would encourage you to go, listener, is to start getting curious about what resources, what organizations, what groups, where can I find people to support me.
We do have an episode on making friends too, huh? Now that I think about it.
We do. Yeah, there is an episode about making friends. So if that suggestion that I just gave sounds like crazy, crazy overwhelming to even think about, yes, go to our Making Friends episode where we talk about things you can do to hopefully help that feel less intimidating and overwhelming. Because it is really hard to meet new people. That's not easy. So that's the stuff I was thinking about.
Okay, so that puts us at the end of Q&A 61. The weird one in the basement. No,
Well, the other thing I actually realized I should add on before you wrap up, because I'm sure people heard it and it can't be edited out. Go figure. My mother-in-law who lives with us, she, I think, walked out with her dogs while I was talking. So people might have heard like scratching sounds of like her dog's claws on the floor. Anyways, this is what happens when we record late in the evening, you guys.
Right, when we're too embedded in real life, right?
Yes.
So stay tuned for the next one, where we will also be too much in real life. But if you want to be in later episodes of Q&As, please continue to post in the Facebook group. You can go to Facebook and just search for DBT and Me Podcast, and or send us emails, dbtandmepodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing from folks, and we promise you will hear back from us faster than everyone else will hear our answers to you.
Yep, that is true. Okay, thanks everyone.
All right. Till next time, everyone.
To learn more about us and the DBT skills we're teaching each week, join our Facebook group. Simply log in to your Facebook profile and search for DBT and Me Podcast.